Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy first day of the season, Callow. What do you know? We got a game tonight.
Hey, a little Friday night preseason action. I've spent Friday nights doing worse. This is always a nice little treat for the preseason. So yeah,
Gonna
I'm
be
good.
good. Yep. We're presented today by AAA, the MVP membership with the Commanders. All right. Preseason opener tonight. Not gonna see a lot of the starters. I don't know about New England. We'll see. So let me just generally say this. I'm going to bring up a bunch of names in a little bit that are people that I am really interested in actually seeing tonight that I think are going to play and probably get extended time on the field. And those are the people I'll be very interested in. What's your just general? What are you looking for tonight, knowing that most of the starters probably will be inactive?
Anyone that's a rookie. I mean, that's always my takeaway whenever you get to preseason game number one. The one question I've got here, and I assume he's not playing, is Amos going to be playing? Because he is a rookie, but he has been a starter since day one, essentially. So that's one where I don't know. You might know better than I do whether he's actually going to play or not. That's one player that I'd be watching for. Our boy Bill, I think, is one that we want to watch because he didn't get much playing time in the joint practice. So that's one that I'm watching for. But any of the rookies or undrafted guys, I mean, I'm not really picky. Just those are the guys that I hone in on, especially on a game like this where the offense and defenses, starters are not really playing much.
All right. So here are the players I want to see. As far as what you said with Trey Amos, I think he's playing.
Okay.
They haven't
Yeah.
told us. I don't have a list of inactives yet. And I think he's playing, but he was starting the other day. And
Right.
Dan Quinn said, the starters during the practice may not play very much during the game. He might fall into the category of one of the players that plays a little bit tonight, but doesn't play a lot. And so I don't really know. I mean, I just don't know yet, not until I get out to the stadium and get the, message from the team about who's playing, who's not, who's inactive, who's not. I don't know. I just know like Jaden Daniels isn't playing tonight. And I know like a lot of the other starters, like Laramie Tunsil's not going to play tonight. Like a lot of that. Brandon Coleman didn't even make the trip. So like many of the starters aren't going to go tonight. But here are the players that I really want to see. Bill really stands out. He's been so far, I think he's been more labeled kind of like the hope of an explosive running back. We've seen it a little bit in practice. I keep cautioning through the first couple of weeks. I haven't seen the guy get tackled yet because they haven't been in a position where they've sanctioned any tackling of him yet. So it all looks really good when it's not really live. This will be the first time that it's live. I'll be interested to see if he's out there because if Jaden's not playing and Eckler's probably then not playing and Tuttle's not playing, I don't know if B-Rob's playing, but if he's not playing, well, he might start. And if he starts and the Patriots actually put their starters out there a little bit, that will be interesting to see. But I think with him, he has kind of represented something we've been looking for since the season was over was, are we going to find people that can be explosive playmakers? And he looks like he could be. And people keep forgetting the part that he's like a 7th round pick. So I need to see it to believe it as good as he's looked in camp so far.
No, 100%. This is a situation where you need to see with the pads, with the pads on, right? Taking him to the ground or him dishing it out a little bit too, right? It's funny. I think the number one thing that, you and each, beat reporter or whoever, is tweeting about his plays, it's always, oh, wow, he moves really well. Like it's a one cut and go type situation. Well, you and I both know things move a lot faster once the pads are on, once guys aren't being as cautious, in practice where they can't bring guys down. This is a situation where he's also, got the opportunity ahead of him too, because they're not going to play Robinson. I would assume they're not playing Eckler. And that at bare minimum means he's one of the 3 guys that's going to get a ton of carries, most likely. So I think he's also got the biggest opportunity out of the guys you got listed here as well.
Yeah, I think with Amos, if he does play, and I don't know whether he will or he won't, but if he does play, and if the Patriots put their starters out there, even if it's just for a series, he could be lined up on Diggs or probably not Demario Douglas, but Diggs or one of their better receivers with Drake May throwing the ball. That will be interesting to watch. Now, we're not going to have our starting defensive line out there either, so it's going to be a different situation for them. But for him, again, while Bill has looked the part, I think I'm just trying to be cautionary about like what kind of impact he's going to have. Amos feels like a walk in the door day one starter. And because of that, I'm very interested to see how he does. Again, though, I want this to be a fair evaluation because the guys he's going to be playing with are not the guys that he's going to be playing with in a month when they take on the Giants.
No, exactly right. Like this is where it just comes into play of this is just the dress rehearsal for some of these guys too. Like even if they don't get a lot of snaps, you want to teach them how to be pros. I thought it was a good question with Quinn the other day too, where I think it might have been Chick that asked him like, how do you give these guys a heads up of like NFL travel? Like that's pretty much what I think this trip is for some of those guys. Like I thought that was a good one because it is different. So that's also the other side of this as well is these guys also just get through their game day routine a little bit as well heading into it.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it too. Everybody who's there will likely dress, go through warm-ups, and then that's it. And so they just want to give them the sense of what it feels like to get ready, go through the day, and get out there. The other one is Kane Medrano. Kane Medrano has gotten some more opportunities. He's the 5th round pick out of UCLA. He's gotten some more opportunities over the last week or so because Jordan McGee has some undisclosed thing going on. No one is suggesting there's anything serious about it, but it's given him some opportunities to get on the field a little bit more. And what you're seeing with him is a flashing of speed, the athleticism. The concerns about him when he was drafted and probably why he went where he went is he might be a touch undersized. His tackling was somewhat in question, and his coverage was somewhat in question. Like a couple other players on this team, he's a converted offensive player to a defensive player. So he's kind of a curiosity. And when we got to the beginning of training camp, it was kind of just like he's buried on the depth chart. Because of his speed and willingness, he'll probably be a special teamer. He's obviously going to make the team because he's a draft pick, unless something really goes wrong, which hasn't. But because some opportunities have popped up and because I figure he's going to play a lot tonight, he's one that I'm watching very closely. Is he going to pop off the screen a little bit? Because I think what you'll see with him is he's got this level of speed that they really don't have at that position. So it'll be interesting to watch that.
Yeah, no, and with a position that honestly is open, like you mentioned McGee, like McGee was banged up most of last year. I'm not trying to like compound this or knock him too much of it, but they didn't really have much behind Wagner and Luvu too. Like we talked about it earlier this week about legitimate roster spots. Well, if they are looking for a backup linebacker and he actually flashes, that's a spot that he could swipe. I feel like that's been a place where does a backup linebacker get on the field that much? No, as you said, probably special teams. But look what happened at the end of last year. There's something that's ingrained in my mind as somebody that had to do sports updates for our station. It was Jordan McGee and Ballore always were hurt last year, right? Like they were always the guys on the injury report. And I'm not knocking those guys, but if Medrano flashes all of a sudden and he can steal a spot, that's probably one of the places where, he can make the team.
Yeah, I really want to see the special teams coverage unit actually tonight. And it's a weird thing to say, but I actually really want to see
It's a sicko statement.
It is. It's total, like it's beyond in the weeds. It is the nerdiest thing I think I've ever said about.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's up there because like I'm watching them and you add someone like Medrano, who I assume will be on the coverage unit, and Yankoff, who I'll talk about in a minute. And we know what Jeremy Reeves is on it. We know what they think of Percy Butler on it. We know what they think of Jeremy McNichols on it. And we know some of the plays that Tyler Owens made on it. What I'm seeing, and I don't want this to be underrated. They could have the type of coverage unit that could be really, really good this year, like really good, like standout special teams players. And tonight, all of those guys, I figure, to be in uniform and to play. And considering the way their offense has performed and number 5 isn't playing, I have a feeling we're going to see a couple punts tonight. So I actually want to see how the special team, I know it's weird, but maybe I'm digging here and maybe I'm too in the weeds with this one this year, but I do actually want to see the special teams unit specifically on punts and punt return tonight to see how that functions.
It's almost like you're saying this is part of the plan. They want more punts. So, that's what's happening tonight. There is one name though that you said there that I don't think like I've actually even asked you about or we've talked about enough is like Jeremy Reeves was listed as the backup safety. He's slowly creeped up that depth chart over the last, from last year into this year. Is he flashing at all? Or the coaches really actually think he's an option to play back there? Because I thought that was an interesting. I remember they kind of started talking about that last year. I think it was Joe Witt Jr. that was like, we got to get that guy on the field, essentially. And I remember that was kind of the talk in the middle to the last end of the season. Then when he's the backup, I was like, oh, look at that. He actually is trying to rise up the depth chart a little bit.
So to answer your question, yes, they want him to play more. To continue to answer your question, yeah, he's gotten some time on the practice field. But then I just look at the depth chart and I go, The starting safeties are Quan Martin and Will Harris.
Sure.
They're trying to figure out Tyler Owens. What is he really good at? It is abundantly clear they want him to play in some level of package. I think they're trying to figure out, is he Jeremy Chin? Is he not Jeremy Chin? What exactly is he really good at? When they find out what that is, they're going to put him on the field because he hits, he's fast, he's big, he's a presence. They're going to want him on the field. Percy Butler, they really like. They just re-signed him, to another year. Part of that is they love him on special teams. He also has a lot of speed. They love him in the locker room. And he's someone that also, like Reeves, will find time on the field. So I think the answer is yes, but I don't know how he plays or when he plays without injuries, honestly.
It's really interesting because, as you said, with Percy Butler too, I think it was the first day of camp or the day before camp, they signed him to the 1-year extension. And I'm going, well, your starting safeties are signed. They signed him. Reeves is on the team too. And yet they're still trying to find spots. I thought it's really funny. They have like a mini log jam at safety, but there's only 2 positions for them to play. So I don't know. It was just I thought it was worth asking there because there's some names there.
I don't think it's their best position group, but it is deeper. I think this is a storyline of this team this year that kind of across the board, they're deeper. There is a spot that we'll talk about in a minute, mainly because there are 2 receivers prominently that are not practicing with them right now that we have to ask a real question about. Is that going to be a weakness if this carries over into the regular season? But safety is a very deep position. Corner is a very deep position. That's one of the other players I want to talk about here tonight that you're going to get a look at for the first time, which is Carlin Vigors. Carlin Vigors was an undrafted free agent this year. I think if I remember right, it was Louisiana where he went, if I remember right. And they loved him. In and around the draft. I had heard his name. He was one of the players that they were raving about that they were able to acquire him after the draft was over to bring him in. Joe Witt said something to us the other day where he said, we have a very good track record of taking undrafted free agents and turning them into good football players, and pointed at him and said, we think there's something there with him. So watch him tonight. 22 corner. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore is not going to be playing tonight. We already talked about Amos. I think he's going to play, but I really don't think it would be a lot. I would doubt it if it's a lot. I don't think Mikey will play, but I don't know about that one, but I doubt he will play. And if he does, it's not going to be a lot. Igbenogany probably has to play, but he's actually looked great in camp, and I doubt they would leave him out there for a long time. So I think you're going to get a really good look at this guy tonight. Pay attention to him. They like him. Not unlike the thing you just said about Jeremy Reeves, it's going to be very hard for him to make the team, let alone be on it. They'd have to keep a 6th corner. The 5 are locks that are going to do it. Lattimore, Amos, San Ristil, Igbenogany, Jonathan Jones. That's 5 corners. If they keep a 6th, he will have a chance to be that person. I know they just like him a lot, so keep a very close eye. He's one of those tonight that's under the radar. I really want to see because I think they think there's some development there for him.
I mean, at the very bare minimum, if they don't put him on the roster, practice squatter sounds about right there. And that's usually where some of these guys end up.
The other one is Ja'Cory Brooks. Ben Standig, week 1 of training camp, came up to me and said, over under of Ja'Cory's that will be on this team this year, 1.5, because we know one Ja'Cory who will make the team. The other one is this guy, and this also, and Jalen Lane, who I've listed up here as well, as people that I really want to see tonight. They've got a really interesting opportunity suddenly in front of them that when camp was about to start or a couple weeks before camp, I don't think anyone saw coming because the Terry McLaurin thing has been more protracted than I ever thought it was going to be. I still would like to believe positively that something's going to work out and he's going to be back on the field here. And I know that they have no intention of training him. So I think something's going to work out and he's going to be our number 1 receiver one way or the other. We know what Debo is, and we know what they're doing with Noah Brown right now, which is they're trying to be very careful with him. They have openly stated they want him to play a prominent role on the outside for them as a pseudo number 3, if that's what you want to call him. But he's not here. He's not going to play. They have slow rolled the first couple of weeks. He had an internal injury a year ago. He had another injury in the spring. They know he's important. And I think based on what's going on with McLaurin, they want to be very careful with him to try to make sure that they can get him ready for the regular season. In the meantime, a lot of reps have gone to people specifically at the outside positions because that's supposed to be McLaurin and Brown, to people that really, I don't think if it was up to them that they would do this. Cliff Kingsbury said the other day, Luke McCaffrey's taken a lot of reps on the outside, and he kind of hinted, that's probably not where we would put him, but by necessity, we have to do this. There are these other couple of young receivers, and Ja'Cory Brooks has been the one that's really stood out in camp because he keeps making these eye-popping plays. So he was a very, very high-level recruit that went to Alabama. Then he ended up transferring to Louisville, and he had a good year there, but not good enough to make the draft. He's an undrafted free agent, but he's a high-level talent. And day after day, he's making these crazy catches every once in a while. He's not doing it regularly, but they're the ones that you're seeing on Twitter. And because there are a lot of opportunities in front of them, he's getting some of them. Tonight is a night for him to shine. McLaurin and Brown are obviously not playing. Debo is not going to be playing tonight. He's probably going to trot out there with the starters and Sam Hartman. And this is going to be a real opportunity to show this isn't just a camp thing. It's live fire. And considering we've talked about this for a week now, I'm surprised we're still here with McLaurin. I sound foolish for saying I thought it would be over with earlier. And honestly, to Kingsbury's point, he's got to play whatever hand he's ultimately dealt. And if things don't work out, he's got to find people that he's going to work with. So there's a big, big night for this guy, Ja'Cory Brooks, to show up because I think he's going to get a ton of reps out there tonight.
Well, I mean, I actually like that Kingsbury had said this too, that it was kind of prepping them that in case McLaurin were to go down or Debo goes down, honestly, right? Because last year we talked about it. There was no number 2 wide receiver. It was number 2 wide receiver by committee, depending on what phase it was. And look, this is what happens when something like this, is going down and McLaurin's not in camp. It breeds opportunity. And a guy like Brooks or even Lane might be getting a little more reps that you're going to get to him in just a sec, that all of a sudden you see what happens when the lights turn on. Because really that's what this has turned into now as well is, yes, they have the joint practices and the veterans and the real starters. They all know what to do in that situation. But these are all rookies that have never played in an NFL game. And you know how this goes. Sometimes guys fold or guys turn into guys, that are all of a sudden amazing when the lights turn on, right? Like my favorite example, I'm sure you remember him. Remember, one of the best practice players ever was Taylor Jacobs with Joe Gibbs 2.0.
Yes.
But the second the lights turned on, that dude disappeared every single game, seemingly. And so that's what I always like about this as well, is sometimes you just find out when the lights turn on. Some of these guys turn into different players, and that's for the good and for the bad. So let's see if Brooks can make some plays. I bet you there's probably a little bit of chatter between the coaches and Hartman and Johnson of toss the ball up to that guy, see what he can do, right? Because I think that's also some of the stuff that happens here in preseason where you get guys that are being too cautious. I'm sure they're probably just saying, hey, this is a situation where we want to get some looks, toss it up to him and see what happens. That's what I would like to see with Brooks.
Let's see what he does. The other one is he hasn't gotten the same level of hype during camp, but Jacoby Jones is also an undrafted rookie free agent who's a little bit bigger. You'll see Brooks has got that prototypical kind of tall, thin, receiver look. Jones fits more of, he's not as big as Debo, but fits more of that kind of model. He has stood out to me a little bit of the undrafted rookie free agents that might get an opportunity. So he's wearing number 10. Keep an eye on him tonight just to see, again, another one who might have some opportunities. There are 3 veterans that I do expect to dress: Michael Gallup, KJ Osborne, and Chris Moore. So how many reps do they get? And again, to your point, if I'm the coaches, don't I want to take a look at Jacoby Jones, Luke McCaffrey, Ja'Cory Brooks, a little bit more maybe than KJ Osborne, Chris Moore, and Michael Gallup. I think you know what you have in those guys. I think you want one of these younger guys to try to take advantage of the opportunity and stand out. So I'll be looking forward to that. Jalen Lane obviously falls into this category too. I assume he'll play on some offense. He clearly, I think they're hoping to get a couple of reps with punt return with him. They had listed on the unofficial depth chart that KJ Osborne was ahead of him. We all know though that Lane is prepping to become the primary punt returner. I did find I was hanging out with B. Mitch last night, how much they have actually been talking with one another and how Lane reached out to him and wants to get a lot of advice from him. And B. Mitch was like, this is a son of a coach. He's football. And he goes, and he told me, he was like, I really appreciate that this kid, has reached out to me and I want to help him. He's like, I want people to succeed. And so hopefully we have a young B. Mitch and Jalen Lane. We'll see.
Well, and I thought that was one of the fun parts of the offseason where they had B Mitch on the practice field for a little bit. Like, how many years have you and I and even fans said this is the guy that's number 2 in all-purpose yards, and the team never really took advantage? Like, and what was funny is B Mitch is around the team so much because he's got his show in town here and he does the a lot of the online content and stuff like that. That's a great thing. And Jalen Lane too. There was a story, I think it was with Kay Adams. I want to say it was with Debo, that Jalen Lane was like a ball boy when Debo was playing, and it was
against Debo's team. Yeah,
because it was the coach's son essentially, and I think it was because he had met his dad and was like, "Oh, my son's coming out in the draft." So yeah, when you're like a football lifer like that, it's kind of hard to take advantage, like for that guy not to take advantage of the opportunity here too.
Yep. The other one too is not on this list that I just want to mention real quick. I keep forgetting about him, is Kaz Allen. He's still here, right?
Yeah.
It's been a few years now. He's still here. Right. At the end of last year, because of some of the injuries that were going on, specifically to like Eckler, they were considering, pulling him up and giving him a shot because they needed some people to play. And he'd been on the practice squad all year and he has a lot of speed, and it didn't happen because he got hurt, and he wasn't able to end up getting up to the roster, and he's back to health. He's been at camp. And, as you bring up like all-purpose yard people, I want to keep an eye on him. Like, I think there's a hard road for him to figure out how to make the team, because I think I know who their kick returners are. I think we know who their punt returner is. I think we know who their running backs are. But again, he's another one that he's just hung around here for a long time. He does have a lot of speed, and I'm sure they'd love to find a role for him if he can fulfill it. So let's see if he gets any shine tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, he was one when I pulled up the unofficial depth chart, where I was like, man, he's still kicking it, right? Like, he's somehow stuck around on this roster. Sometimes those dudes, same thing. You shine in preseason a little bit and you just hold a roster spot down. Yeah,
that's possible. The other one I have on this list up here is Colson Yankoff. So I think we all know this is a really big year for Ben Sinnott. In his second year, they're trying to find a role for him. One of the really nice developments of camp was Zach Ertz looks better than he did a year ago. And the other day at that joint practice, if you were doing a fantasy draft, you'd pick him in the first round because he looks like he's going to catch every pass Jaden throws. The way they're going, the connection is really real there. And, I was I wasn't skeptical of a return because the connection was there and the chemistry was there. But I think all of us were kind of like, could they find somebody who could stretch the field a little bit more at that position? There was really nobody in free agency to go after that would be that. And then in the draft, they're not going to use a high draft pick unless somehow like Tyler Warren was going to fall to them, which wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to use a high draft pick on something like that. So you run it back, and Ertz looks incredible, in incredible shape. His separation on all these routes are there. He and Jaden just have this connection. It's made more and more sense that they did run it back with him. For Sinnott, who's supposed to be the long-term, I think, replacement for him, this is a big year for him. And what has happened over the course of the last year or so is they love this guy, Colson Yankoff, who kind of fits this Taysom Hill type role. He was a quarterback. He is a tremendous athlete. He's a very willing participant on special teams. And he's been getting more and more opportunity to be a receiving tight end. We know the blocking tight end is Bates. So for Sinnott, he has some competition here. Just like Kaz Allen, too, Cole Turner has hung around. Cole Turner's not off this team yet. Cole Turner has put on some size. He looks a little bit bigger. That is an underrated competitive room that's going on right now. Ertz is clearly the number one tight end. Bates is clearly the blocking tight end. It's Sinnott's role that's really kind of in question. I have no doubt that he's going to be on the team. He's a second-round pick, and they're not going to walk away, I don't think, from something like that. But there's a lot of competition going on. And watch Yankoff here tonight, too. Again, he just kind of flashes around because he's a tremendous athlete. So keep an eye on him tonight.
No, I thought one of the more interesting things about that unofficial depth chart that came out was that there was clearly a starting tight end, like a receiving tight end, and a blocking tight end at separate positions on the depth chart, which I appreciate. It tells you how they're breaking their roster down. And I remember just kind of going like, oh, right, Ben Sinnott. Like, not saying I forgot about him, but that's another person that I want to see if he flashes at all in preseason because he was a high pick. I kind of will push back on you saying that he'll be on the roster. I think if he doesn't show enough, they'll happily put another player there because I think the way this team has operated is they want competition. They want guys that are going to contribute. I don't know. It would be a surprise. Don't get me wrong. But with this coaching staff, I don't know. Would you be shocked if one of those other two stepped up and they decided to actually cut him? I don't know. I think it'd be a surprise, but I also wouldn't be surprised, I guess.
Yankoff would have to really step up, and they'd have to really think that he's going to be able to play, as needed. Like
Sure.
in a should Ertz, roll an ankle or something. They got to put him out
Right.
there as, they'd have to really, really, really think that. So I don't feel like he's in any real danger right now, but it is a very competitive spot. One other quick thing I just kind of want to see tonight, since I'm all over the special teams. I actually hope we get a couple long field goal looks tonight, because Matt Gay, who's got, it's actually been refreshing to see the team with a kicker with a strong leg again, because it's been a couple of years since we've had that. But he's got that. That's not an issue. What his issue was and why he's not in Indianapolis any longer is inaccuracy from 50 out. He was actually very good from 50 in, and 40 in, he's practically automatic. But like, you should be if you're a professional kicker, and there's no issues with snaps or stuff like that. But from 50 out, he was inaccurate. And so the Colts moved on, and Washington scooped him up because they didn't really have a kicker with this kind of leg. And we're hoping we're going to get him back on track. It's been up and down with him in camp from distance, not from anything like within typical range, but from distance. So there's part of me that I want to see some punts tonight, because I want to see our punt coverage unit. I want to see what they look like. I want to see our punt return unit. And I actually hope they get into a situation where he has to kick a 52-yard field goal, because I would like to see that happen, because I think, you have to be concerned about it. You have to feel like you've got the kicker. It's early in camp. I don't think he's, there's no competition here for him, but I do want to see it. And so I'm actually hoping we get one of those scenarios tonight.
Yeah, I think it was kind of funny when they signed him. You and I both said, hey, if they have to get, closer to 50 yards, this is the offense that could do that. So, yeah, let's try to get some of those opportunities in. But at the same time, Indianapolis cuts him, and he's going to be better than any kicker we had last year, right?
By far. Not close.
This is right. And this just happens for me. This just turns into a Cliff and Dan, you guys get to figure out when we go for it on fourth down again, because if he can't hit one from outside of 50, that's just something we're dealing with as the season goes along here.
That's right. I mean, listen, from the perspective of the strong leg, he's by far not even close, better than what they've had the last couple of years. The distance is not the problem, but it's like a quarterback with a strong arm. If he doesn't know where it's going, what's the value of it?
Sure.
So he hits the net, but 5 yards to the left. So I want to see what ends up happening here. And I'm hoping, hopefully he straightens it out and we're all good, because the leg is there. All right, let me take a quick break. Brad Buster Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. We got Commanders and Patriots tonight, preseason opener. Let's go around the league a little bit. The preseason essentially opened last night, and it started with the Colts and the Ravens, and the Colts already have quarterback issues off of one night. Unfortunately, someone decided not to block a free rusher on Anthony Richardson, and he ended up breaking a pinky finger, and it was turned sideways on his throwing hand. So that's a terrible start for him. Thought it was telling he was the starter in the preseason opener, because I think that was going to be a big time question. Daniel Jones came in, and I saw all these Giants fans tweeting, he's not on our team anymore. He's not on our team anymore. He's not on our team anymore. So their quarterback situation is about as ugly and unsettled, I guess, as we all thought it might be. I think there was some hope Richardson will turn the corner, or Daniel Jones will be a Tannehill and he'll show up and be really, really good for team 2. And it's early and it's the preseason, but it doesn't look like either of those things are happening right now.
Yeah, and that was actually Richardson started, but they were one of the teams that had the or on there. It actually said Richardson or Daniel Jones. I mean, not that you're breaking any news there, but they weren't handing it to Richardson by any means. So I think this was the make or break season regardless with Richardson. I just haven't seen it with that guy. And I thought last year, the biggest red flag, we talked about it at length, where he pulled himself out of a game. That was almost kind of like the nail in the coffin, but you try to see how he develops. He was always one of those guys that when he came out of the draft, everyone said it was going to take him a long time to develop because he had only played one season in college. Not a good start last night. I even saw some people say that because it was an empty set, your rule is to get rid of the ball real fast because somebody's going to be free there. So there was not as much blame either that, Richardson actually might have caused it himself because it should have been a quick read and out. So that happened yesterday. I'm not surprised there. I think the Colts are going to be looking for a quarterback at the top of the draft anyway.
we were all out last night at dinner and we were watching it, and
Yeah.
like what came up really was his experience. Like, listen, he's an outrageous athlete. But he only started like 8 games at Florida, and there were a few of these games where he's just an elite player, and he makes people look silly every once in a while because he's an elite player that's just better than the other players on the field. He's not going to be that much athletically better than everyone else in the NFL. He will have an advantage, but I think it's the experience. We were all talking about this. Like, it's very, very, very hard to learn how to play this position at the NFL level. And I think Trey Lance learned this. Trey Lance, in that start that he had against Washington at the end of the year, I thought was better than what I kind of expected when they put him out there. And maybe, with 4 or 5 years now, all of a sudden, like, he's had a lot of reps. He's been around. He might be a really serviceable backup or potentially a starter, down the road if he ever gets that opportunity again. I think that's the future for Richardson, really. Like, that he's just going to have to hang around, and because of his athleticism, as long as he still has the desire, people will keep him around, because if nothing else, they'll put packages together for him because he's such a crazy athlete. But I feel like, and we were all talking about it, like learning to play that position when you weren't particularly accurate in college on a short amount of experience, it really is a recipe for disaster. And, it's just this league is so much different than college football. It's just not even close. So for him, to be fair to him, they just took a flyer on a crazy athlete who had no experience, and it's kind of biting them a little bit now. Will they be patient enough to wait it out for a couple of years until hopefully he gets it? I don't know. The second team might be the team that gets him and goes, sit on the bench, learn how to play. And if you emerge as the better player, you'll play here sometime.
He screams the O'Connell, McVay, LaFleur signing if they end up cutting him. Like, those would be guys that I think would.
I think those are system. That's a system. He'd have to be very accurate, get the ball out fast, make reads. I actually think he needs to be in a place that's open-minded to a very athletic quarterback. Like, that's what I think.
I think those guys are all really good coaches. Like, there's been chatter this week because I've been trying to, brush up for fantasy that, like, Kevin O'Connell, it's something like every the quarterbacks average 20 points a game in his system. It doesn't matter who it is. They average 20 points a game in his system. I'm just saying, if you get somewhere where they think there's that potential, you also look at Richardson too. I know no roster is perfect, but look at what he was drafted into. That offensive line in Indy has never been amazing. The wide receivers aren't amazing there by any means either. Taylor was really good a couple years ago, but he hasn't really been the same since. He's been banged up. That's the other side here. Is I think they were asking a lot of him as well, with not kind of like an elite position either to lean either on a run game or a number one wide receiver. That's the other part of that as well, that I just don't see it. And look, there's a factor here as well. Like, it's a little uncomfortable to say, but like, Irsay's not there anymore. Are they not going to be as patient because he kind of made that pick too? Like, I think there's a little bit of a factor there. I don't know if that would have made the difference this year, but like, they're not married to him is what I'm getting at. So I don't know. Maybe the leash is really short this year.
I'm very interested also, AFC West this year. This division, I don't remember this, and someone would have to correct me if I'm wrong. They have 4 Hall of Fame head coaches in that division now, which is pretty wild, that like they have that level of coaching talent, all of them at an extended part of their career. Obviously, I mean, Pete Carroll's in year 1 and he's in his 70s, Andy Reid is still trucking along there. Jim Harbaugh is doing his thing. And Sean Payton, I think has given Denver a completely different outlook. They made the playoffs last year with a horrific cap situation and a rookie quarterback. Watch out. Like, if he can kind of turn Bo Nix into Drew Brees, watch out. And I've kind of talked about this a little bit. I am not off on the Chiefs yet, but I do think the other teams are catching up a little bit roster-wise for sure. And the coaching is caught up for sure, And so now I think that they're just kind of ripe. They still have one of the best players ever playing quarterback for them. So it's going to be hard to beat them. And, we said this about Brady a million times. Remember how many times did we say, like, I can't believe the Patriots got rid of that guy. I don't think they're going to be as good. They let this all-pro guy go like a year ahead of time, and all they did was go 14-2 anyway. So like, until it doesn't happen, it's hard to project against it. But I do feel like it's things are getting closer. It feels like things are getting closer in that division, which is why when one of those rivals loses an all-pro player for the season, it's a big, big, big deal. It's a big deal for anybody, but it's a really big deal there. you can't come in shorthanded in a division like that. And so the Chargers, that's a humongous loss. They just signed Rashawn Slater to a massive deal like 2 weeks ago, and they lost him for the season. So that stinks.
Yeah, and also like with Herbert, they're already relying on him to, make things happen. They have, a young wide receiver group. I know they signed Allen for a year, but like what's left there? And he needs every little bit of help he can, because the knock on him is he hasn't won a playoff game yet. Everyone says, oh, he's a top 10 quarterback, but, push comes to shove, he hasn't won a playoff game. And then all of a sudden, this next rookie class has come in and Nick's made the playoffs. Jaden Daniels goes to the NFC Championship game. The pressure is on Herbert a little bit here, and that's just such a massive loss. And you look at the defenses across that division too. That's a tough loss for them. And it's kind of funny. Like, you scroll through the comments sometimes, and the joke was like, oh, Chargers fans getting ready to load up their other excuse, because like they have an injury like this happen. And like, you don't want to harp on that, but it's true. It is always something with this franchise. Seemingly it's really like they are snake bitten at this point.
In the Seattle-Vegas game last night, Jalen Milroe did not start, but he came in. He had a couple of nice runs, couple nice throws. So he looked pretty good for them. And, I don't really buy Seattle this year, albeit I'm not sure what I make of their division, honestly. I think that's a very odd division. Like, everyone assumes that as long as they're healthy, the 49ers will be back to being really competitive again. And then there's all this Stafford stuff that he's got a back injury and we don't really kind of know where there is. And they're like pumping up Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, they're like, oh, everything's going to be fine. I'm like, I don't think so, guy. Like, he better get healthy. And they're saying he's going to practice, but here we are. He's had injuries for a while. He's got a back issue. So like, how long is that going to hold up for? Arizona's total curiosity. Like, I'll buy they're a little bit better, but I don't really trust Kyler to ascend, because it's been so long, but I'll buy they're a little bit better than they've been. And Seattle, I just kind of didn't buy, but because the division is kind of so weird, I don't know. And I do think him performing well last night is going to put a lot of heat on them if Darnold is not what he was a year ago in Minnesota, that this is just going to be another symbol of, if they start kind of slowly and Darnold isn't posting crazy numbers for them, and maybe he won't in a new system with a new, new everything around him, there's going to be a lot of drum beats to put this guy in the game. So we'll see.
I think Seattle smartly, and I wouldn't say quietly, but smartly is doing a soft reset of a year. All right. Like, they were 2 games out of a playoff spot last year. It's not like they had a terrible year with a first-year head coach too, by the way. And they kind of managed the roster in a way that I thought was intriguing. I don't know if it's going to work out, but they do the Geno trade, get some draft picks, load the roster up a little bit more. Then they sign Darnold. I don't know. I don't know if I love or hate what they did with the roster, but I do know a soft reset when I kind of see it. And does it come to fruition this year? Probably not. But I don't know. For a team that's in that division where the Rams are always going to be there if Stafford's healthy, where the Niners are constantly loading up, and I'm going to be frank here, I don't think you worry about the Cardinals, but you're trying to catch up to those other 2 teams. I find their situation really intriguing. And if Milroe all of a sudden is an option, that's a win for them this year. If that all of a sudden becomes somebody that they can rely on down the line. I'm with you. This division's a little wonky, but Seattle, I thought, was kind of doing the soft reset, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the NFC West is going to be hard to predict, especially if you got to take into consideration Stafford's health. And
that's it. I mean,
all year, they're the favorites to win the division. If he's not, well, we'll have to see how that kind of plays out.
The other side of this too is the Niners. I don't think a lot of people are talking about them because of what happened last year, but I think we all know the score. If they're not healthy, they fall apart. And
if everybody,
right? Well, but if Christian McCaffrey's not healthy, we saw what happened last year. I mean, it all goes to hell essentially. And so, are you really going to rely on Brock Purdy to carry that team? Okay, good luck with all of that if you can. Everyone gets a year older. That roster is, I think, what worries me. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit open. And with Stafford, too, by the way, I say this all the time with Stafford. He's a 1 year in, 1 year out guy, it seems, as of late. He seems fine 1 year, and then he's banged up the next year, and all of a sudden he can't get healthy. That could be the case this year if this back doesn't, go away.
The other thing from last night, Ashton Genty made his debut. He only had a few carries. They didn't go anywhere, whatever. Yeah. I don't think that's that big of a deal. That said, I would like him to start slow. We get him in week 3, and I'm pretty convinced he's going to be good.
Yeah, right.
There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a definitive good player. If he is starting slowly in week 3 against us, I'll take that because he is going to have his fair share of 15 carry, 135 yard, 2 touchdown games. That guy is a no-brainer going to be a good player.
Yeah, I don't read too much into the preseason stats of the high draft pick running back. He's just trying to get his feet wet there. I'm good.
That's right. All right, we'll take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. One other game to get to from last night. Tanner McKeon, summer hero. Crazy numbers as the Eagles win their preseason opener. I think it's, I think it's probably why they felt very comfortable with Pickett walking away and all that stuff. I think they have a backup in this guy. I don't know what they are if he was a full-time starter for them. And clearly, I think Jalen Hurts gets way, way, way too much criticism. I mean, he wins so much, but they have a backup in him. This is 2 years in a row now where in the summer, they're like, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is also one of those situations where sometimes as a franchise like the Eagles, you kind of just know the score too. I think they kind of know if Jalen Hurts goes down, your chances of actually winning kind of take a huge, massive hit like any team that loses their starting quarterback. Look, this is what the Eagles do too. This guy makes no money. You don't have to pay for a legit backup. You could fill out the rest of the roster a little bit more. I think the drop-off from Pickett to him was probably negligible, and that tells you everything because he actually played a little bit last year too. Good for him. It's a nice little story, but we all know the score if he's actually playing in a game.
I mean, as much as I hate to credit the Eagles, in their history for all time is the Nick Foles Super Bowl. So,
that's true. I'll give you that. Yeah.
They put a statue up of this guy who had a very mediocre career, but had an incredible, incredible postseason run.
Well, and that's what, that is too, though. That's a credit of how stacked the roster is too.
That's right.
I mean, that's been since I've been a kid. Since the late 90s. They've always had a stacked roster.
That's right. Burrow and Chase did get real playing time last night. So the Bengals are very serious about this. We don't want to start slow again. We are going to put our guys out on the field if they're healthy. They're not scared of the risk of the injury. They had already more than hinted that their offense and defense could play like a half next week when we play them here. So that'll at least make that preseason game fun. If they follow through with all of that and put their starters out there, it'll really kind of change the dynamic of the game between the Commanders and the Bengals. So I'm looking forward to that. They actually played and he was on. I think it was 9 for 10. Chase had what looks like a classic, typical touchdown of his. Catch the ball at the 20. You can't catch him if you give him a crease. So they're full operating here early in the preseason.
No, I think this team had the writing on the wall of they were going to play in the preseason. Last year, they literally missed the playoffs by a game. I think they all came to play. They're going to be an interesting team early on because I feel like their intensity is going to be ratcheted up. And we saw it last night. There was that 6 sideline catch last night too, where he tipped